I want to talk about today is unrealistic expectations of communication and how that seems to be really inherent to the blockchain space in particular, uh, more predominantly, let's say, than in other fields. And what I'm referring to here is the idea that if you're not communicating, you're not giving an update every 15 minutes, every 30 minutes after you've initially announced something, that there's something there, and like you should be getting an update every hour or so. And we've seen this repeatedly with the ENF. When we make announcements or when we talk about something, if you've noted, we ensure that we translate everything into Korean as well as Mandarin, so that not only do we communicate frequently and consistently, but that when we do so, especially from a formal point of view, that we communicate to the broadest community as possible. Seeing as obviously native language of communication for the ENF is in English, that does put the other communities in a way at a disadvantage. And we saw over the last 3.5 years or so that in the ecosystem, a lot of that formal communication came only in one language. And the other communities, the other cultures throughout the world were always left receiving the information much later on. And so if after something was put out, some type of a press release or something that was official, then people would be able to start the translation process, and they would get the information potentially a week later, 2 weeks later, depending on the case. And that really fractures, or I guess it really puts a distance between different communities. And the ENF, right from the get-go, we made it one of our mission statements that everything that we would do that would be formal, we would be translating in 3 languages. And that takes time, right? There's a certain amount of communication and coordination that goes into doing that. And so what we've done over the last 6 months or so is we've been putting out blog updates every week, give or take, sometimes more than once per week. And we've been doing the coordination of translation so that the community, from the ENF's point of view, gets constant communication and reliable communication every single week. And that's more of the formal type of communication. Now, in between, because obviously I'm able to speak English, we're able to join things like the fireside chat, which also occurs every week. I invite you to join. It's really good fun, and it's really informal. That occurs in English. And so that's something that the other cultures can't really participate in unless really they're able to communicate in English and or at least understand English. So it doesn't mean that they necessarily want to participate, but they could at least listen in. And there's a certain amount of logistical difficulties to ensure that everything you do is being translated, subtitled, interpreted at the same time, right? So inevitably, English-speaking folks do get an advantage over others. And so we ensure that at least when it's something more formal, that we make sure that they get the information at the same amount of time. Now, when it becomes unrealistic, and this is kind of the idea behind this rant, is that after we publish something, that then if 24 hours goes by, sometimes it's even shorter than that, sometimes after 3 hours or 4 hours, we leave the message with, we'll communicate further as we get more information. This unrealistic expectation that it's been 2 hours, where's the next update? Sometimes there's no update in the next 2 hours. Frequently, there isn't. So we've showcased as the ENF that as soon as there's something that we want to communicate and that we're capable of communicating, we do so. I really hope at this point that that's not really debatable. If you look over the last 6 months, I don't think we've had a week gone by without having some type of formal communication on top of the daily back and forth in channels, on top of the fireside chats, on top of the any other method of communication, whether it be, for example, lately joining Mandel release calls and upgrade calls, that type of thing. So we're quite readily available within the community. But on top of that, we ensure that at least formally, once per week, we make those more formal communications. But it's going back to this idea that if you don't communicate every 15 minutes, every 30 minutes, if you don't give an update within that period of time, that something must be up. That's just unrealistic. We don't find that level of unrealistic expectation communication type of thing really in other industries. This seems to be quite inherent to the blockchain space. This idea that obviously because we're running on a blockchain, all the transactions are transparent, everybody can see those and they can follow along. And so that should also apply to communication. And to a certain extent, it does apply. We are extremely transparent with our communication. But it's this unreal. It's when you cross the line where it becomes unreal in terms of expectation, where if you haven't given an update in 15 minutes, in 30 minutes, something must be up. And so I really want to stress that we do over communicate, I believe. We ensure, and it is by design, we ensure that we're made available to the community as often as possible, as consistently, as reliably as possible. But to bring it back a little bit, that expecting us to be able to give you an update every 30 minutes is not realistic. I mean, most of my day is spent, 100% of my time is spent on EOS, but most of my day is spent in and out of meetings, talking with different stakeholders, coordinating where this ecosystem is essentially going, getting feedback from the various stakeholders within the ecosystem. It is possible that we make an announcement and then I'm in meetings for the next 4 hours and nothing has happened on that particular announcement or on that particular file. People should not be waiting around, waiting for, oh my God, something's going to be coming, something's going to be coming. That's unrealistic. That makes no sense. I think at this point, we've shown that when there's something that is an update or something that's relevant to bringing forward, that to communicate, that we do so. And we do so with respect of other cultures and the other community members where we want to include them in that discussion. And so we do so with the translations, with the interpretation as such, in formal matters, so that we don't leave people behind. We're not trying to replicate what we've seen in the last 3 years. We're trying to move towards somewhere that is more inclusive with the other communities and other peoples and cultures around the world, so that everybody gets the information roughly at the same time, ideally, keeping in mind that it's not possible. It's logistically impossible for us to communicate everything we do in the 3 languages at the same time. But as much as possible, when it's something that's quite substantive or quite heavy, that we do take the time to ensure that that is communicated to everyone at the same time. I really hope that you learn a little bit from this because, again, it goes back to in blockchain, this seems to be an issue and it's not realistic. It logistically impossible in some cases, and other times it is by design. That is the idea. Or other times, and more frequently than not, there is nothing else to communicate for a period of time. Time needs to go by until there's something else to talk about. What do you think?